Start recording. Hi, this is Will Smith, and I'm here with Jack Etkin, who's the producer of our regular show on Shaw Television on Channel 4 here in Victoria. And our regular show is called Citizens Forum, where we interview various people, mostly Jack and Walt McGinnis interview different people. But today this is a different format where we're just going to talk about things that concern us. And the main topic in today's show is democracy. So we're going to talk about our form of democracy here in Canada and just what we see around the world. I'm in particular very hopeful that things are changing for the better, and I just want to avoid getting into trouble as as the old civilization sort of winds down, and we have all these great things going on in our new civilization, and we're just going to kind of explore that to see how we can participate the most effectively in our current democratic system. So I'd like to just say that this is June 19th, 1 o'clock, and we're streaming live in Victoria, BC. The name of our group is ICTV, that's Independent Community Television Victoria, and we've been doing this now for about 10 years on and off, and 5 years for our latest incarnation on Channel 4. But anyway, we'd hope that you'll watch this, and we don't have a way for you to participate yet since there are only the two of us. We can't really set up a chat line, but in the future, we would like you to comment if you have any comments about, and we do know the lighting is going to be fixed, but you can comment, you can tell us what you think about the audio or just what we're talking about. So at this point, I'm just going to run the introduction, and we'll be right back.
Democracy we have in Canada is no democracy. There is no democracy in Canada. And that's, from my perspective, what I want this show to be about. How to get it back. Not even get it back, I don't know if we ever have, but how to get more. And democracy just means, am I speaking too loud?
No, you're perfect.
Democracy just means that people have a voice. And in the Canada of today, in 2018, I don't think people have a voice at all. We're controlled by a small corporate elite. We are, in fact, not a democracy, but a corporate dictatorship. And that is the problem we have to fix. When we can fix that, then we can solve all the other problems we have, from our healthcare system, homelessness, high house prices, debt, our schools, our communities, the environment. All of those things will quickly begin to get better once we have some democracy in our country, because we want those things. The people who run the country now don't want, well, they just make money from destroying, maybe later we'll give an example. But yeah, democracy.
Okay. Just I agree with what Jack's saying, that we absolutely have to have a democracy. We don't have a democracy right now. I've seen it myself. I mean, people are very controlled here, the way they act, and we're all in the same boat, though. I mean, it doesn't matter. There's no magic country somewhere that has a beautiful functioning democracy. And we've had a couple of people on our show. For example, I'd like to put this one up. This this is a person who Walt was interviewing, and she was telling how you can just see the frustration. What I really get out of this, what I really want you to see in this is the frustration level, because here is someone who really believes in, at least I get the idea that she believes in the system, but that belief has sort of faded. So we'll just watch this quickly.
Well, I understand now why people don't vote. I used to always think that there's always a differentiation between the parties, and you have to at least pick the least bad of the lot. But now, after this decision on Site C, I just feel that there's absolutely no difference between the BC NDP and the BC Liberals. So I totally understand why people can't be bothered to go and vote.
With that kind of feeling about the system that we live in, I mean, she's not the only one that feels like that. Obviously, there are a lot of people who aren't voting anymore, and obviously, if we're in a real democracy, we all have to at least make some effort to keep ourselves informed about the issues, and then when we do vote, we have to see that it makes a difference, and it doesn't just get our ideas don't just get sort of flushed or taken away. And the thing is, one of the problems that we have right now is the basic sovereignty. We've gone from a situation where people are supposedly sovereign and the government is our servant, but that has changed now. And one of the things, for example, that we've seen lately is this is a poster from Facebook, and this is a fellow named David Dodge, who is the former governor of the Bank of Canada, and he said there are some people that are going to die in protesting construction of this pipeline. We have seen in other places that equivalent of religious zeal leading to flouting of the law in a way that could lead to death. So obviously, protesters getting killed isn't really a part of the democratic process that we're used to. And the thing that occurred to me when I read this is, who has the right to kill people for protesting? I mean, that's if the democratic system isn't working, then they're protesters. I went to, as an aside, I went to Rose Henry's 60th birthday, where an elder spoke, and one of the points that he made was that, well, in addition to this being unceded territory of First Nations tribes, the other thing is that they don't even recognize the border between the United States and Canada. So that's something else that the people who are running the show right now at some point have to look at. Is this a rule by law? Are we really following the laws? Or are we just going to arbitrarily, if the powers that be don't like what we say, are they just going to kill us? And I think that's one of our main issues right now, is we have no way. I mean, even Elizabeth May, for example, was put in jail, right?
No,
she wasn't. She was just arrested. You're on.
Yeah, she was arrested, fined, and I think that was it. $1,500, I think. But I don't even know if she was taken. I wonder if she was taken to a jail, or they just released her on the spot. I don't know.
Well, the thing to me is that voting is one thing, but when you have to get out in the street,
like what the lady said about a few minutes ago, you showed that clip, what she said about the two parties being the same. She was talking about the NDP and the Liberals here in British Columbia. I learned that, unfortunately, a long time ago, that the parties are the same. And what it really means is that all the big parties in Canada are controlled by corporate Canada. If you want to become the leader of a party, I mean, you have to be their guy or their gal, or you're not going to make it. They run the show. So the parties are there more, like I'm a member of the NDP, but I wouldn't vote for those people. I'm a member of the NDP because I believe in the NDP dream, better environment, better society. But the party's been taken over by careerists, and their job is to make us think that there is an NDP that we can vote for and trust. And they do it very well. Lots and lots and lots of people believe them. But when they get elected, and the approved Site C, the fish farms, we're going to see what happens. The clear-cut logging continues. The Mount Poly, they allowed the statute of limitations, one of the greatest environmental disasters in Canadian history. So we have to see it for what it is, that they don't work for us. The politicians work for the corporation. And it comes down again to democracy. We don't have any when that's the case. So we, the people, have got to take control of our own political process in this country and make it work for us, because right now it's destroying us.
Well, yeah, and the question is, how do we do that? I mean, my own perspective as someone who's lived in many different countries during my life, and I've remained somewhat disenfranchised since I haven't become a citizen of the places that I visited. I just am forced to watch and do the best I can with being an activist and talking to people and discussing things. What I saw in that woman's face was that she no longer believed in the system, and I think that that's not a good place for us to be if there are a lot of people who don't believe in the system, and it doesn't matter whether they're just voters or whether they're that guy like the Bank of Canada. You know, I mean, he doesn't believe in the system either, because he's making a threat. He's just saying people are going to die. Right? I mean, that's what it sounds like to me. It's sort of an oblique threat. So how do we get back our power to do that? And that's the big question I have in my mind, is because if we are going to just be killed off by protesting, or we're just going to get gaslighted and to the point where we don't believe in the system anymore and we can't be bothered to vote or do any research, I don't know. I mean, that's really not democracy.
So I think it's a good thing to not believe in the system, because the system is totally corrupt. So if we stop believing in it, we're taking a step in the right direction. We've got to understand how bad things are. I mean, there is no democracy. What we want does not matter. 85% of us, I think, want genetically modified foods labeled. Is that too much to ask? Well, yes, it is, because it doesn't happen. So, understanding the problem, and understanding that the media, all our television stations, all our radio stations, all the daily newspapers, and a lot more, are run by the corporation, and everything that goes into their media is controlled by them. We don't have a free press in Canada, and that's the other part of our problem. So what can we do? Right now, there's a big thing coming up. Here in British Columbia, we're going to be having a referendum on changing our voting system to what's called a proportional voting system. Mm-hmm. A proportional voting system is more democratic, I think. That's why it's so very, very difficult for us to get it, because the powers that be do not want us to have it, because they know it's more democratic. It gives us a little more power, it gives them a little less power. So just the other day, the former CEO of one of Canada's largest clear-cut logging corporations bought the front page of the Vancouver Province newspaper and put a sort of anti-proportional voting. He just took the front page and put an anti-proportional voting thing on it. I mean, that's what we're up against.
Did it make any sense what he was saying, or was it just? I mean, I find it really hard to argue against proportional representation. That just seems to be a no-brainer to me.
Well, it is, but they pretend to be concerned about the people. They can pretend to be concerned about the public. We're so concerned that this system isn't going to be good for you. They don't care about you. They don't care about anything but themselves. They have all the power, and they intend to keep it. That's what PR voting is really all about. Just look who's lined up. I mean, the number one guy for the no proportional voting is Bill Tiernan, who is basically just a lobbyist. And he, I assume, is getting, I shouldn't say anything because I don't know. And they've got other big names lined up to make sure that we don't get it.
Well, one of the guys that you had on the show last week, Mehdi Najari, had I think he sort of defined the system of government that we live in right now as sort of the politicians are sort of making the world safe for corporations. I mean, they're facilitating rule by corporations. So if we look at the political system, if we say, how is the political system functioning right now? Well, it's functioning very well if you look at it from that point of view. It's doing a great job. When they want something, I mean, I watched a few things. I watched Adam Olson's little report on the salmon, and I understand that they're going to announce something tomorrow, and they're going to maybe do a study. And I noticed that on some of the things that they want, they do what Mehdi calls a drive-by study. So they just say, "Oh yeah, that's what to do." But if they do a real study, it takes a lot of time. So that's pushing things out to the future. It's just another way of abusing us, really. And so, what do we do with that?
Well, to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but to me, this new Wild Salmon Advisory Council that the NDP set up on Friday, today is Tuesday.
Tuesday, right?
So a few days ago on Friday they set it up. And it's going to look into, I mean, there was one of the MLAs standing, Lana Poppy, standing, a big sign saying, I think, protecting the wild salmon, something.
Right.
I mean, that's the shtick that the NDP is pushing.
Right.
So on Wednesday of this week, tomorrow, is the last day for the NDP to decide about approving or not approving 20 fish farm licenses.
Okay.
Yeah, did you know about that?
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of referring to. There's some kind of decision
the public has
going
been
to be
kept
announced.
completely unaware that on Wednesday, these fish farm licenses are coming up. They have to be renewed by John Horgan, the great environmental hero, John Horgan. But the media, they do their job by keeping the issue down. Nobody knows what's happening. On Friday, John announces a Wild Salmon Advisory Council to look into the future of the salmon and how to make it all better. Tomorrow, I assume what they're going to say is, well, because we've got this Wild Salmon Advisory Council looking into the issue, we can't make a decision about renewing those licenses. So we'll just let it slide, for a while until we get a report back.
Yeah, see, that's
It's
disingenuous. That's really, it's a betrayal of all of us. So how do we? The thing that I'm concerned about more than anything else is how do we stay mentally healthy when this is being done to us? Because it's not democracy. Let's cut to Elijah's little salmon film here, and we'll see what. In case you're wondering what we're talking about, this clip has a couple of things. It has David Suzuki and has some pictures of what's actually happening to the salmon. This is a drive-by study that some of the protesters have done. So now I'm going to bring down.
Worried about the parasites spreading from the fish and disease and the feces, and it just never occurred to me that the volume of wild feed for wild salmon coming in, my God, it's shocking.
As I knew fully well, they're pit lamping our baby fish in there. I inspected the farms last August, September. That's what you got. The same is what you got there. Tons of baby wild stock fish. They're not licensed for that, you know what I mean? And right there you can see the big ones trying to chase them down and catch them. But it's too clear in there. Comes dark, it's going to be thick on the surface, and then those big fish are just going to feed away on them. You know what I mean?
We've sent those tests away, and they've come back positive for Piscine virus. These guys have been allowed to regulate themselves, sort of like the fox in the henhouse kind of thing, and they haven't been very honest with not the federal government and certainly not the general public, and that this disease is running rampant now in our hooligans and our herring and our wild salmon.
But anyways, the baby pinks and the baby chums started coming by home a month back, so that's why I really wanted to be here to catch these baby fish in a pen. And Lord behold,
wild salmon are so essential to the health of this entire coast and in fact the whole province. And this is so essential that we understand the need for the protection.
And it's very disheartening to come home to see these fish farms, the way they're set up. It's like a gauntlet that our wild salmon are going to be going through. And every time we go out in the water, my heart breaks. Go and talk to a real Indian, and you'll be surprised how open we really are. Don't buy farm salmon.
On June 20th of this year, the province will decide whether the licenses get renewed or not. It is not really up to the province to decide. It is First Nations title. It is First Nations territory. And that is the crucial distinction that needs to be clarified on the front lines. Our whole planet is under attack, and everywhere people need to stand up for what is good and what is sacred. If there is an event that is for the wild salmon near you, go to it. If there isn't one, create one. Join the Salmon Nation. Join all the people on the front lines that are doing things to help Mother Earth. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing.
You're on.
Thank you very much, Elijah, for doing that. It was excellent, brilliant. Thank you so much.
Well, the thing is, one of the things I want to point out is that we do have a lot of power in our hands now, and this technology of being able to stream stuff and show people what's going on, to some extent, I mean, if we know everything that's going on, it's too much for us to handle. There's so much bad stuff going on, and the thing that I think we have to do is figure out a way to reclaim our own power within the communities that we live. And so we have to make sure, the main thing is we have to just make sure of food and shelter, because they don't seem to be concerned about the basics. They seem to be concerned about making money is really what they're doing, right? Facilitating the making of money.
Piece of wood in there to brace it better.
I'm going to run this other thing.
So we're going to have to.
This is an interview with Bruce Lipton, who wrote a book called The Biology of Belief. I don't know, it's pretty dark in here, but it's The Biology of Belief. And it's talking about how we're in a this little excerpt from the interview is about how we're in a transition time right now. We're going from a failing civilization to a new civilization. So without further ado, I'm just going to run that.
And I remember one of the most profound things I heard. I've been following you since like way back, and the biology of belief. You started lecturing on that, and one thing that really blew my mind is because of my near-death experiences, I know for a fact we're gonna move into a unity state consciousness where our identity is shifting. I know this, like I can feel it. This is, and you come in and you say, well, bacteria, they evolve to a certain capacity, and then suddenly they just team up and become something else together. A new identity, and that totally blew my mind. And this is what I'm seeing going on with humanity right now.
I'm glad you're seeing that, because this is a very important point for people to hear.
Yeah,
we are changing our civilization, and we have to change the civilization. It's not a choice. You want to, you don't want to, because our civilization is destroying the ecology of the planet. and we're facing extinction. And human behavior is doing this. So if we want to survive, we have to change culture, because the culture is creating the upheaval and destroying the environment, the way we live. And so I say, well, you can't live in this culture anymore. This is the one that's causing the problem. We have to live to a new culture. So I said, well, how does that happen? It doesn't overnight. One night you go to bed or you wake up as a new culture. It takes time. So let me give an analogy. A caterpillar eats and eats and eats and eats until it gets so big that it puts itself in a shell, a pupa. And in that shell, a butterfly is formed. I say, well, wait, it starts as a caterpillar, it turns into a butterfly, but they have the same cells. So that meant the cells that were organized as a caterpillar have to let go of organization and then start to come together in a new organization. It didn't happen instantly. One comes down, one's coming up. When we look at the world today, and this is the critical part why when you brought it up, it's so important, we're seeing a civilization that is causing extinction coming down. It's failing everywhere, especially where I live. The whole thing, you know, just the politics in the U.S. is showing the thing is blowing up. It's not working. It's destructive. So, and a lot of people are like in fear because they see, oh, everything, you know, the job, the security, the safety, I'm afraid because they see it coming apart. And I go, no, that's the problem. Don't focus on what's coming apart. Something new is coming up.
Yes, exactly. The new earth.
And you're part of this system here. It's the internet system. It's the nervous system that is connecting all the people that thought they were separate into one organism. That's how my one organism called Bruce is not a one organism. There are 50 trillion cells. Every cell is a living entity. A cell is a miniature human. They live in a community. When my brain is working right, my community is healthy and happy. But when my brain sends the wrong information and creates the problems, that's where the disease comes from. Okay? And that's where our conscious minds and our subconscious minds are they're interlocked with each other. But the subconscious has nobody in it. It's just a program, record, playback. And so trying to talk to the subconscious like a lot of people do, oh, I want to change my behavior. I'm going to change it. I'm not going to do this. I say, who are you talking to? I'm talking to the subconscious to change the program. I go, there's nobody in there. So you're wasting a lot of time. There's nobody listening, so don't bother.
It's just a mechanism.
There's nobody in there. It's just a mechanism. 100%, Joshua. That is exactly what the story is. And if people get this information, which I'm hoping this is why we're talking about this.
Exactly.
Is that, am I a robot or am I the controller of a robot? The body is more like a robot. With a brain, that's a controller. But the brain has a program and the brain has a spirit. Which one's running? When it runs from the spirit, we create heaven on earth. When it runs from the program, we create whatever the hell the program said it was. Violence, war, anger, everything. So I say, look at the world. We've been separated for thousands of years as individual people competing with each other. And what do we find out? That behavior is destructive of the planet. It's causing our own extinction. That we have to start recognizing we're all part of one. It's called humanity. Each of us is a cell in the same body. So if we fight each other, that's called in biology autoimmune disease, self-destruction. And that's the biggest issue in health, is because what's going on in the outer world is being reflected in what's going on in the inner world. Most of the sickness we have has nothing to do with the outer world and everything in the way we're sending signals to the 50 trillion citizens whose community and harmony give us our body and our health, but whose disharmony is expressed as illness and disease. And so where do the disease and things come from? Only 1% from genes, 1%. 90+% came from the government, the mind that was sending signals to the cells. Are they healthy signals or scary signals? Whatever you're concentrating on, that's what you're sending. And the signals of health and love create vibrant, vital life. But the signals of fear actually will shut down the system and cause all the disease. And that's why there's so much sickness on this planet, is people are afraid of their future. They don't have trust that they're going to be okay. The war, anger, everything.
They do what the mind does, which is totally worrying about the future or the past and not in the present.
Our rulers, our ruling class, to divide us and create fear. And they're very successful at doing that. I mean, they've deliberately created an enemy of the Muslim religion. That whole story is a pack of lies, right?
Right.
Muslim people are not our enemy. Our enemies are the enemy within, the ones who control our country and create fear and division for their own ends. So understanding the reality of the situation is important. One reality is that they own all the media. And so everything cannot be trusted. They tell us, because why would they want to tell us the truth, the news, what's really going on from the correct perspective, when, I mean, they don't want us to be informed about the important issues of the day. They want us to be unaware, and that's what they use their media for. So how do we move ahead? One is to understand that we don't have a free press and we don't have a democracy. Another is to start to build the things we need. There are simple procedures that can improve our democracy. One, I would say immediately, would be right across the country, citizens' assemblies on democracy and how to improve democracy in Canada. Let's say a citizens' assembly on democracy in Canada, and have one, dozens of them across the country. A citizens' assembly is just the bringing together of groups of people, picked at random, so they really represent the public. Right? They're not representing stakeholders, which picked at random, so they represent the public, and start to come together, inform and educate themselves, and inform and educate the rest of us. So we start to learn what we can do. And one thing we can do is to reduce the power of the party leaders. That's a simple thing to do. In Canada, more than in any other Western developed nation, shall we say, Canada is the worst for having all the power concentrated in the hands of the party leaders, the premiers, and the prime minister. In our system, they have all the power. Nobody dares stand against them. People who write on this issue in Canada say we have an elected dictatorship. And that's exactly what we have. And if that dictator does not work for us, and that dictator does not work for us, it works for the corporation, then when you have all the power in one hand, and that power works for somebody else, then we're totally controlled. So we've got to break their power down. And we need a free press. And these things are doable, but we have to unite around doing them. They want division. I mean, in the United States, I mean, just what Fox says compared to CNN, they're pitting the American people against each other over the issue of Russia and Trump and the police and the NFL. It's always division, because that's what they want. It's the same in Canada. When they want trouble, they just attack Quebec, or they pit Alberta against BC over a pipeline issue, when the real issue is the corporations are destroying our entire planet. But that issue doesn't even get a mention. So we've got to understand what they're doing and then beat them at their own game.
So do you think that if we can just get this proportional representation through, that the rest will sort of follow suit? In other words, I mean, it seems to me that this, doing streams like this, talking about these things that are not controlled, this is an uncontrolled press, and if we can get people to watch and participate in things like this, so that instead of being fed this filtered nonsense that we're fed over the airwaves by the TV and the other press, radio, that we can get this information out, and it will change people's minds because they can see that what is being shown to them on TV or on what they listen to on the radio has been massaged to do something specific, right? So, I mean, do you think that if we can get more information out like this and get a proportional voting system, that things could change?
Well, proportional voting is important because it's such an important issue. They are putting everything they have. I mean, Trudeau promised it, right? It was never, I mean, it was always a lie, but he did promise it, and then took it back. I mean, we can see how important it is to the power structure that we not have it. So if we can get it, it means we've beaten them on an issue, on an important issue. They've got a poison pill in there as well, but that's, you know, another story. They will do their best to stop it. They will do their worst to stop it. So to beat them is something. If we get it, it's a step in the right direction. We need several other steps as well.
What are those steps? Are there something? Are these things that can be worked on at the same time, or do they have to sort of go sequentially?
No, they can be worked on at the same time. One is called parliamentary reform, and it means reforming the way Parliament operates so that it starts to work for us instead of working for the power structure, which it does now. All the people we elect to our provincial governments and our federal government are completely controlled by the leadership, because the leadership can end their career tomorrow, and none of them want that. A lot of these people are career politicians.
Right.
This is their job, and they want to succeed at it. The party leader can remove them tomorrow if they dare stand up against him or her. We should have that power to remove them, but we have no power. So they're controlled. That can be changed. It can be fixed. We're the worst, so obviously it can be changed because everybody else is better.
Now, is this at the provincial level or federal level? Is it everywhere?
It's the same.
Okay.
It's the same. Another thing we should have is, I would say, something like an independent prosecutor to oversee the political parties, right? Because the political parties exist in order to govern us, and they are so corrupt in the way they operate. Because who oversees right? They are the rulers. Who oversees them? Nobody. So the rules can be broken, and they are broken in order to bring to power the people who want power more than anything else. When you have a totally corrupt political party system, how can we ever hope that democracy will come out of that? So we need public oversight on the political parties, citizens' assembly. We need a free and independent press and media, and a few other things.
And how do you see the proportional? I see the proportional representation as being a huge stepping stone. I mean, to me, I'm very optimistic about this because of this sociological phenomenon known as the tipping point, and it only takes the tipping point. I think it's written in a book by Malcolm Gladwell called Tipping Point, and it's only 10% of a population that really, if a population, 10% of a population really firmly believes something, then the whole entire population will change, sort of a 100th monkey effect. And I'm just wondering, I mean, I think we're pretty close to that, frankly. I think that it looks worse than it is right now. I think people are, in general, fed up, and what, you know, I mean, the great thing about what's going on in the United States is that it really has made people, you know, they're polarized. Say, this is enough. I can't take this anymore. This is stupid. So how do you feel like we're close, or are you frustrated?
I'm frustrated because I think people are being, I mean, the power of the media to control public opinion is so immense that the division we're seeing, especially in the United States, but in Europe as well. Europe is in big trouble now. I think it's all controlled from above. They want the trouble because that's how they rule. And we have somehow got to get past that, stop believing their stories, and come together to create the society that works for us. You see it in the Scandinavian countries more than anywhere else, I think. You know, you see what are called successful societies. They're more heavily taxed than we are. Their governments are less corrupt. They have proportional voting. And they build societies that for the most part seem to work a lot better than the way our society is working now, from what I hear.
They're more equitable.
They're more equitable. And,
Yeah.
and you know, I read a book a long time ago, and it was called The Spirit Level. The spirit level being the thing that you use to measure
Right.
if something is level. And what the book said was that if you have a society where the income is fairly even, then all the studies show that that produces a very, very, very good society in all the measures, from mental health to physical health to happiness to drug use to everything. But when you spread the income so that there's the very rich and the very poor, you get more crime, you get more instability, you get more you get all the things that we're now seeing in Canada, and we certainly have seen for a long time in the United States. So if we can just take over from our ruling class and just bring that back together, just take their money. It's not their money. Take the money they've stolen from us over such a long time. Just tax the bastard. And take back what they've stolen and create a better society. You know, it will do it automatically. That's the last thing they want. That's what has to be done to save our lives, because I mean, from climate change and 100 other environmental issues, these same people have come, we're on the edge of the destruction of our society. And we've got to build something good and something better out of it before, or they are going to just take us down.
Yeah, I think we have to. The thing that when I hear you talk, I've got this something that you know. I've got the. On the one hand, I've got this hope that you're right, that these things can be changed, and then I've got this other thing that sort of wells up inside me, and that's sort of like, yeah, I've heard this stuff before, but you know, we see it and nothing changes. But at the same time, I really am optimistic, because I think people are saying, I mean, people really are seeing that, like that woman, you know, that this isn't working the way, we can't keep telling ourselves the story. I mean, I see people saying to themselves that the system is working, but I see other people saying the system isn't working. So I think for me, I'm going to have to look at things the way they are, and take Mehdi's analysis and say, yeah, the system is working. It's doing a great job of promoting the corporate agenda, and so we know that the system can work to promote a more humane agenda, a more human agenda, and I'll be looking for the signs that transition is actually happening. But I'm not going to. I think I've spent an awful lot of my life being disappointed in results, and I'm tired of it. I'm tired of being depressed about how you know, what the system looks like. I was raised to believe in the American system, and you know, it is a disappointment to me right now. So I think a lot of my friends are that way too, who live in the United States. I mean, I love the United States, the people there, and I like the values that were taught to me of equality and liberty, but the implementation of it leaves a lot to be desired.
Well, the United States has been taken over by the 1% of the 1%. The people are powerless, just like we are here. And the poor American people, I mean, you know, the Nazis did not lose World War II. Germany lost World War II and was destroyed, along with Russia. The Nazis just came back to the United States and took it over. And they've run the country ever since. And they ran it before. So, I mean, corporate America funded to bring to power in the early days Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. I mean, if somebody wants to Google the words Bush, Hitler, and Guardian, you will see in the British newspaper The Guardian the story about how corporate America funneled money to Hitler and the Nazis to get them started. I mean, when you're a small group, what do you need? You need money. And where did that money come from? Corporate America, funneled through a bank in part, controlled by where Prescott Bush, banker and later senator, after the war they elected him to be a senator. So, I mean, the poor country is so corrupted. The poor people of both of our countries. We've got to throw off these insane lunatics. But first we have to even realize that that's what the situation is. Because when I say this kind of stuff, most people think I'm crazy, and maybe I am, but
no, I don't think you're crazy. The thing that concerns me, as I say, is that if we look at this stuff, it's easy to get in a state of fear. It's easy to get in a state where I'm worried that they're going to come and get me, or whatever, or that I'm going to die from the food I eat, or chemtrails, or whatever it is. I mean, there are all these nasty things going on, and so what I want to do is I want to find some way of living that generates hope in me and those around me. And so what I hope to show in this show is that there are people who are doing that, and if we focus on what people are doing to make the world a better place, then we get a different picture from the one that's presented on the news media, because the world that they're showing us, this is the world we've created for you. Now let us fix it for you too.
No, I'm with you 100%.
You know, so good. So anyway, I think you want to talk about anything else, or are you happy with what we've done? Throw anything else in here?
Yeah. Rail, using trains in Victoria.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if we could just reduce the use of the car a little bit, the city would be so much better of a place. Imagine if we had a really, really good, pleasant public transit system using, I mean, just trains and trams, you know, it would just change the city, and especially if it was clean, quiet, comfortable, pleasant, and there's no reason it can't be. Mm-hmm. I mean, that requires a transformation of our entire society in some ways, but we can get all of that.
But does that come from the top down, or does it come from the bottom up? I mean, like, one of the things I was thinking about with the salmon, when I was watching the salmon, is all of us can make a decision not to eat farmed salmon. I mean, I've made a decision I don't eat farmed fish at all, and in fact, I won't eat anything that comes out of the Pacific right now. But all of us could not drive a little more. We could depend on other forms of transportation, or we could carpool. So what I think is that part of this has to come from the intentions of individuals to say, you know, I'm gonna drive less, or I'm gonna buy an electric car, or there has to be. It can't all just come from the top down, and that this change, because they're not doing it. I mean, that's not what they're doing. So I think that each one of us, it behooves each one of us to try to make some kind of quality decisions. Is this reflective of our old failing civilization, which I would characterize like plastics and petroleum and things like that, or is this part of the new civilization, which would be like hemp and electricity, electric cars, even if those are transition things. So I think that I'd like to spend some time talking about that, because what are those things that each one of us, what are those little tiny things that each one of us can do to make a difference, instead of just saying, well, we're going to wait until the system changes, or we're going to wait until we have proportional representation. So this, you just sort of tweaked that in me. I didn't really think about it before, but that's one of the things that I'd like to talk about.
We should be doing exactly these things you're saying, while at the same time working for.
Exactly. Yeah.
The two are.
They're interlocked, aren't they? Yeah. So I think that's a really a point that we need to continue to talk about, is how can we do things differently, and how can each one of us in our individual lives sort of make a decision, make a quality decision to act a different way, and to do, I think, doing little things, doing a little thing every day can make a huge difference over time, because each one of us has attitudes, internal attitudes that need to be changed. I mean, we all treat the system as if it's going to go on forever, but I have a suspicion that it's not going to go. It's not going to go on forever, and the next financial crisis might not be as easy to get out of as the last one, and the last one wasn't. I mean, it affected me, but it affected some people more deeply, and then people who had a lot of money, it made their situation better. So, how do we do that? Let's talk about that. I mean, over time.
Yeah, and if we had PR, for example, I think we'd now have trains and rail running in Victoria, so we'd have that option as a way to do something better. So we need to be building it from the bottom, and we also need to be making sure that we control our own government, so that we're working together to give us the society that we want, instead of them, the society that they want.
The society that they've designed.
Yeah. And
well,
hemp is a big one.
It is. Jack, thanks a lot for being on this show, for this experiment, and we've been chatting for about an hour now, and I just really appreciate your willingness to do this and to be behind, to be supportive of it. And so I'd like to thank everybody who's watching our stream for watching this show.
And Will, I would like to thank you for your great genius in putting this together on a budget of just about nothing, and being able to do this. It is absolutely incredible, the way this thing works.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And without further ado, goodbye.